Hi, Ruth. The aliens abducted you. Can you tell me how it all happened? Stay calm.
My name is Ruth Caldwell. I'm 72 years old, and what I'm about to share with you in this interview, I still can't believe it happened to me. Sometimes I wake up hoping it was just a nightmare, but then I feel that spot behind my ear, and I know it was real. 4 days of my life, gone. But to me, it felt like only 10 minutes had passed. This video might not stay online for long. Like, comment, and subscribe now, so the truth keeps reaching those who need to hear it. I've never been one to believe in things I can't see or touch. Growing up in the Midwest, then spending most of my adult life on our Wyoming cattle ranch, it builds a certain practicality in you. Frank, my husband of 43 years before his passing, used to say I was hard-headed as the mountains. He wasn't wrong. Before I get into what happened that Tuesday evening last September, you should know I'm not some fragile old woman whose mind is slipping. I still run this 80-acre ranch largely by myself. I've always been particular about my health, never smoked, rarely drink, and ranch work keeps you stronger than any gym membership. Dr. Larson in town says I have the constitution of someone 20 years younger. After Frank died of a heart attack 2 years ago, everyone expected me to sell the place and move into town, or worse, to some retirement community near my son David in Colorado. But this ranch wasn't just Frank's life. It was mine too. We built it together, and with the cattle market what it was, selling would have meant taking a loss on everything we'd worked for. So I stayed, learned to manage the things Frank used to handle, kept the books like I always did, hired Miguel, a local rancher's son, to help with the heavier work, developed routines. I was doing just fine. The day it happened started like any other. Up at 5:30, coffee while watching the sunrise from the porch. Did my morning rounds, checked on a pregnant heifer that was close to calving, called my daughter Laura to chat about the grandkids. Around 4 in the afternoon, I took the truck out to check on a section of fence in the north pasture that Miguel had reported needed fixing. This was everyday life for me. Nothing special. The sky was clear, temperature in the mid-60s. Perfect early fall weather. I remember thinking how the aspen leaves were just starting to turn golden along the ridge. I parked near the broken fence section and got out with my tools. Something felt different, though. The cattle were acting strange, restless, bunched up in the far corner of the pasture. I figured maybe a coyote had been through earlier. That happens sometimes. Then I noticed the quiet. Wyoming is always quiet compared to city life, but this was different. No birds, no insects buzzing. Even the breeze seemed to stop. And there was this pressure, like when a thunderstorm is building. That heaviness in the air before lightning strikes, except there wasn't a cloud in the sky. I had this sudden urge to get back in the truck, something primal, like an animal sensing danger. But I've never been one to spook easily. I told myself not to be ridiculous and kept working on the fence. That's when I heard it, a low hum, barely audible at first. I thought it might be a vehicle on the county road, maybe a mile off. Though sound carries strangely out here sometimes. But it grew louder, and I realized it wasn't coming from the direction of the road. It seemed to be coming from everywhere. Inside my head, almost. I stood up, scanning the horizon. Nothing unusual that I could see. The humming intensified, and I felt it more than heard it. A vibration in my chest, my teeth, my bones. The hair on my arms stood up. And I had the strangest thought that the air itself was becoming electrified. I reached for my phone to call Miguel, but it was dead. Completely dead. Not just no signal. I tried the walkie-talkie I keep for ranch work. Same thing. Just static. Then nothing. The vibration grew stronger. My ears popped like when you drive up into the mountains too quickly. I felt dizzy, lightheaded. Remember thinking I might be having a stroke. Frank's heart attack had made me paranoid about my own health. I tried to walk back to the truck, but my legs felt heavy, uncoordinated. The sun seemed to flicker. like someone flipping a light switch on and off, but with the sun. I've never seen anything like it before or since. And then I saw the light. Not the sun, something else. It started as a pinpoint, directly overhead, growing larger, not moving like an aircraft would move, just expanding, getting brighter. No sound associated with it at all, which made no sense. Everything that flies makes some kind of noise. I tried to look away, but I couldn't move my neck, my eyes. I was completely frozen, just standing there by that broken fence, my hammer still in my hand. I wasn't breathing, but strangely, I didn't feel like I needed to. Time seemed to stretch and compress all at once. The light engulfed me. I felt weightless. And then I was standing in exactly the same spot, hammer in hand, the fence still broken in front of me. The sun was setting. It had been mid-afternoon just seconds ago, but now the sun was low on the horizon. I took a deep breath, feeling like I'd just surfaced from underwater. My body felt strained, tingly, like when your foot falls asleep and starts to wake up. I thought I'd blacked out briefly, maybe fainted from the heat. It wouldn't be the first time someone my age had a dizzy spell. I decided I'd better head back to the house, have some water, maybe call Dr. Larson in the morning. I got in my truck and drove home. Everything seemed normal except for how quickly the sun had moved in the sky. The cattle were back to grazing normally. Birds were singing again. That strange pressure in the air was gone. As I pulled up to my house, I noticed unfamiliar vehicles parked in the drive. A police car. My son David's SUV with Colorado plates. A few trucks I recognized as belonging to neighbors. I remember thinking there must have been some kind of emergency. Maybe something had happened to one of the kids or grandkids. My heart started racing as I parked and got out. David saw me first. He was standing on the porch with Sheriff Brennan. The look on his face. I'll never forget it. Shock, relief, confusion, anger, all at once. He ran to me, grabbed me by the shoulders, staring at me like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Mom, where have you been? Dear God, where have you been?" I didn't understand the question. "Fixing the north fence," I said. "I was only gone a couple hours." Sheriff Brennan approached slower, like he was seeing a ghost. "Ruth," he said carefully, "you've been missing for 4 days. We've had search parties out looking for you since Wednesday morning." I laughed. I actually laughed, thinking it was some kind of bizarre joke. But no one else was laughing. Behind them I could see Miguel, my neighbor Elaine, and 2 deputies I recognized. They were all staring at me with the same expression, part relief, part disbelief. "That's impossible," I said. "I just left to check the fence this afternoon. I was there maybe an hour, tops." David was crying now, something I hadn't seen since his father's funeral. "Mom, today is Saturday. You disappeared on Tuesday. Your truck was found by the north fence. Driver's door open. Engine still running. But you were gone." I felt cold suddenly, despite the warm evening air. "That's not possible," I repeated. But even as I said it, I knew something was very wrong. The sun's position, the strange experience by the fence, the lost time. I raised my hand to my neck, where a sharp pain had suddenly flared up. There was a small tender spot behind my right ear that hurt when I touched it, like a healing injection site. "I need to sit down," I said. And that's when I realized my clothes were completely clean. The same clothes I'd been wearing Tuesday, but spotless. No dust, no grass stains from fence work. My boots, which should have been muddy from the pasture, looked freshly polished. 4 days. Missing for 4 days. But to me, it felt like 10 minutes had passed. That was just the beginning. It wasn't until later that night, after the sheriff had taken my statement, after the doctor had checked me over, after everyone finally left me alone with my thoughts, that the flashes started. Images, sensations, fragments of something that didn't fit anywhere in my understanding of the world. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe I should back up, explain what happened after everyone realized I had no memory of those 4 missing days. That first night back was difficult. David insisted on staying at the ranch with me, slept on the couch despite my protests. I could hear him checking on me every couple of hours, opening my bedroom door just enough to make sure I was still there. Can't blame him, I suppose. I didn't sleep much anyway. Every time I closed my eyes, these flashes would come. Not exactly images, more like impressions, sensations, a feeling of being observed. Cold surfaces against my skin, light so bright, it seemed to pass right through my eyelids. And sounds, rhythmic humming that seemed to vibrate inside my skull. The doctor in town, Ellen Larson, came by the next morning. She's known me for 20 years, delivered 2 of my grandchildren. I could tell she was concerned, trying to be professional while dealing with something completely outside her bar experience. Physically, you're in remarkable shape, Ruth, she told me after her examination. Blood pressure normal, heart strong, reflexes good. No signs of dehydration, which is frankly surprising if you were outdoors for 4 days. I wasn't outdoors for 4 days, I said. At least I don't think I was. She gave me that look doctors have when they're choosing their words carefully. The human mind can do strange things in traumatic situations. Memory gaps are not uncommon. This wasn't a memory gap, Ellen. This was something else. She asked about the tender spot behind my ear, the one that still hurt when touched. There was no visible mark, no puncture, no bruise, but it felt like something had been inserted there, then removed. Dr. Larson suggested it might be a pinched nerve or muscle strain. I didn't argue, but I knew better. "I'd like you to consider seeing Dr. Mehta in Sheridan," she said before leaving. "He's a neurologist. Could rule out any complications." She meant stroke or early dementia. Didn't say it, but I knew. Everyone was thinking it. The strange old woman had wandered off, confused and somehow survived, but clearly wasn't right in the head anymore. By afternoon, the story was all over the county. Small communities, you know how it is. Sheriff Brennan asked me to come in and give a formal statement. David drove me, hovering like I might vanish again if he blinked. At the station, they treated me gently, like I was made of glass. Sheriff Brennan recorded my statement, asking questions about what I remembered. What was I wearing? Had I taken food or water? Did I have any history of sleepwalking or confusion? Had I been under stress lately? I told him exactly what I remembered. The strange quiet, the humming, the light, and then nothing until I was standing in the same spot with the sun suddenly setting. He nodded, took notes, but I could see in his eyes he didn't believe me. Not really. "Ruth," he said when we finished, "we found your truck exactly where you left it. Engine running, your toolbox on the ground. But we searched every inch of that pasture and the surrounding 10 miles. Dogs, volunteers, even had a helicopter from the county over. There was no trace of you anywhere." "I don't know what to tell you," I said. "I was just gone." That night, more fragments came back as I tried to sleep. I remembered a circular room, walls that seemed both solid and somehow not quite there. No corners, no edges. Light that came from everywhere and nowhere. And eyes. Large, dark eyes watching me. Not human eyes. I can't describe them properly. And that terrifies me. How can I not find words for something I saw? The next day, I insisted on going back to the fence. David protested, but I was adamant. I needed to see it, to try to understand. The fence was fixed. Miguel had finished the repair job after they found my truck. The cattle grazed peacefully. Nothing seemed unusual, except, standing there, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. In a rough circle about 15 feet in diameter, around where I'd been working, the grass was different, flattened in a spiral pattern, like something heavy had pressed it down. And at the center, where I must have been standing, the ground was changed somehow, harder, almost crystallized, like sand that's been struck by lightning. David saw it too. "What the hell is that?" he asked, kneeling to touch the altered earth. "Mom, this isn't normal." I felt cold despite the warm day. "No," I said quietly. "It's not. That night, I dreamed. if you can call it dreaming when it feels more like remembering. I was lying on a surface that conformed to my body, though I couldn't see what it was made of. The air felt thick, hard to breathe, but somehow sufficient. I wasn't restrained, but I couldn't move. Not paralyzed, just completely lacking any desire or ability to move my limbs. There were figures moving around me. I couldn't focus on them directly. It was like trying to look at something in your peripheral vision. When I tried to turn my head to see them clearly, they seemed to shift position. All I could make out were slim silhouettes, movements that were too smooth, too fluid to be human. And there was communication. Not speech, at least not with sounds made by mouths. More like thoughts placed directly into my mind. Not in English or any language I know, but somehow I understood. They were curious, methodical, not cruel, but not particularly concerned with my comfort either. Like scientists examining a specimen. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. The digital clock by my bed read 3:14 a.m. As I reached to turn on the lamp, I noticed something on my arm that hadn't been there when I went to bed. A series of small, perfectly round bruises, evenly spaced like fingerprints. But no human has fingers arranged in that pattern. I didn't tell David. I wore long sleeves to breakfast, and by afternoon the marks had faded completely. But I knew they'd been there, just as I knew the dreams weren't really dreams. A week after my return, as everyone had taken to calling it, a man named Dr. Carter came to see me. He said he was from the University of Wyoming, researching atmospheric phenomena. But something about his questions, the way he recorded everything I said, made me suspect he wasn't really a meteorologist. "Mrs. Caldwell," he asked after I'd gone through my story again, "have you experienced any unusual abilities or sensations since your experience? Changes in perception, perhaps? Sensitivity to light or sound? Unusual dreams?" I nearly told him then, about the flashes of memory, the bruises, the overwhelming certainty that something truly extraordinary had happened to me. But some instinct held me back. I didn't know this man or who he really worked for. So I lied and said no, nothing unusual. He seemed disappointed but gave me his card before leaving. "If you remember anything else, please call. Any time, day or night." I burned that card in the kitchen sink after he left. 2 weeks after I returned, I finally convinced David to go back home to his family in Colorado. He didn't want to leave, but his wife needed him, and his kids were starting to ask questions about when Daddy was coming home. I assured him I was fine. Truth is, I wanted to be alone with what was happening to me. The memories, if that's what they were, kept coming back in pieces, usually at night. Not in order, not in any way that made sense. Just fragments that I had to try to put together, like a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing. I started keeping a journal, writing down everything I remembered, no matter how strange or impossible it seemed. I'm a practical woman, always have been, but I needed to make sense of this, even if only for myself. One night, about 3 weeks after my return, I woke up suddenly at exactly 3:14 a.m., same time as before. The spot behind my ear was throbbing, and there was a high-pitched tone in my head, like feedback from a microphone. I got up, thinking I'd left a radio or the TV on, but the house was silent. The sound was coming from inside my head. I walked to the kitchen for some water, and as I reached for a glass, I noticed my hand was trembling. Not just trembling, vibrating, almost in rhythm with the tone in my head. And then, without warning, words formed in my mind. Not my words. Not in English, but somehow I understood them. Return, signal, coordinate, 19. Over and over, like a recording on a loop. I dropped the glass, and it shattered on the floor. The sound broke whatever was happening, and suddenly, the voice, the vibration, the tone, all gone. I sat there on my kitchen floor surrounded by broken glass until dawn, afraid to move, afraid to close my eyes. When the sun finally came up, I convinced myself it had been some kind of waking nightmare, a product of stress and lack of sleep. But deep down, I knew better. I started noticing other things, too. Electronics behaving strangely around me. The digital clock by my bed would reset itself to 3:14 for no reason. The radio in my truck picking up strange static, sometimes forming patterns that almost sounded like words. My cell phone battery draining completely after just an hour, even when I wasn't using it. And there were the dreams, so vivid, so real. I saw things in those dreams that I can't properly describe, things that the human mind isn't built to comprehend, structures that seemed to bend in impossible ways, beings that changed form as I looked at them, star patterns I've never seen in any sky on Earth. In one particularly vivid dream, I was shown something like a map, not drawn on paper but three-dimensional, floating in the air. Points of light connected by lines of energy. One point pulsed brighter than the others, and somehow I knew it was Earth, our solar system, but there were hundreds, thousands of other points, all interconnected. Network, transit, return, 19. I woke from that dream with a nosebleed so severe, I nearly called for an ambulance. It stopped after about 20 minutes, but it scared me badly. I tried to draw what I'd seen while it was still fresh in my mind. The drawing didn't make sense in the light of day, just scribbled lines connecting dots, with numbers written around the edges. I burned it in the fireplace, then immediately regretted doing so. About a month after my return, Sheriff Brennan stopped by unexpectedly, said he was just checking in, but I could tell something was bothering him. "Ruth," he said finally, sitting at my kitchen table, "has anyone else been out to your property since you came back?" I thought about Dr. Carter, the supposed meteorologist. "Just the doctor," I said. "Why do you ask?" He looked uncomfortable. "We've had reports of unusual vehicles in the area. Black SUVs, government plates, and a couple of local boys claim they saw strange lights over your north pasture 3 nights ago." My heart started pounding. "I haven't seen anything," I lied. I hadn't seen vehicles, that was true. But the lights, I'd seen those, watching from my bedroom window in the middle of the night, pulsing in patterns that seemed deliberate, like signals. Sheriff Brennan didn't look convinced. "Just be careful, Ruth, and call me if you notice anything unusual, day or night." After he left, I sat on my porch for a long time, watching the sky. Was I being watched? Were they coming back? And who were they, exactly? That evening, I found myself drawn to the north pasture again. I took the truck, told myself I was just checking on the cattle, but that wasn't the real reason. Something was pulling me there, like a fish on a hook. The sun was setting as I parked in the same spot where everything had started. The spiral pattern in the grass was still visible, though fading now. I walked to the center, stood where I'd been standing that day. Nothing happened. No lights, no humming, no lost time. Just an old woman standing in a field as darkness fell. I felt foolish, but also disappointed somehow. Part of me wanted it to happen again, wanted answers. As I turned to go back to the truck, I noticed something glinting in the grass, catching the last rays of the sun. I bent down to look closer. It was a small object, no bigger than a grain of rice. Metallic, but like no metal I've ever seen. It seemed to shift colors as I looked at it. Silver to blue to something that wasn't quite a color at all. Without thinking, I reached out to touch it. The moment my finger made contact, a jolt of electricity shot up my arm, and I was hit with a flood of images so intense I fell to my knees. I saw myself on that table again, surrounded by those beings. But this time I could see them clearly. They weren't like anything from the movies or TV shows about aliens. They weren't gray or green. They were shifting, like they couldn't decide on a form that would make sense to my human brain. Sometimes they seemed almost human, then insect-like, then something else entirely, and they were doing something to me, to my head, behind my ear, inserting something. One of them communicated directly into my mind. Beacon, signal, coordinate, return, 19. When the vision passed, I was curled up on the ground, shaking uncontrollably. The tiny metal object was gone, either lost in the grass or back inside me. I could feel that spot behind my ear throbbing in time with my pulse. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. What did they put in me? What did those words mean? Signal what? Return where? And what was the significance of 19? That night I did something I hadn't done since Frank died. I got his old shotgun from the closet and loaded it, placed it by my bed. I didn't know if it would do any good against whatever they were, but it made me feel less helpless. I didn't sleep, just sat by the window, watching the stars, waiting for lights that didn't come. Sometime around midnight, I noticed something strange about the stars themselves. A particular pattern, one I'd seen in my dream. A constellation that shouldn't have been there. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that I was still being watched. I didn't tell anyone about what happened in the pasture that night. Not David. Not Sheriff Brennan. Who would believe me? A 72-year-old woman claiming to have an alien beacon inside her head. They'd have me committed before I finished the sentence. But I knew it was real. As real as this ranch, as real as my own hands. 6 weeks after my return, I started noticing cars parked along the county road, near my property. Never the same vehicle twice. Sometimes they'd stay for hours, sometimes just minutes. When I'd drive over to investigate, they'd pull away before I got close. I started taking photos with my old Polaroid camera. The digital one on my phone never seemed to work right anymore. Captured a few images of dark sedans, SUVs with tinted windows. No clear shots of license plates or drivers. I kept the photos in an envelope under my mattress. Proof I wasn't imagining things. The number 19 kept appearing in my life too. The electric bill came to $319.19. A calf was born weighing exactly 19 pounds. I'd wake at 3:19 a.m. night after night. My truck's odometer rolled over to 91,900. Small things, coincidences maybe, but there were too many to ignore. One night in early November, about 2 months after it all started, I was awakened by that now familiar tone in my head. High-pitched, insistent, the spot behind my ear throbbing in sync with it. But this time there was something else too. A pull, like a physical tug urging me outside. I tried to resist, wrap myself in blankets, put a pillow over my head. Nothing helped. The pulling sensation grew stronger, almost painful. Finally, around 2 a.m. I gave in, got dressed, put on my coat and boots, and went outside. It was a clear night, cold as only Wyoming in November can be. Stars everywhere. The Milky Way a bright smear across the black. But I wasn't looking at the sky. Something was drawing me toward the north pasture again, like a compass needle finding north. I took the truck. Didn't even feel like I was driving it myself. My hands turned the wheel. My foot pressed the gas. But it wasn't me deciding to do those things. I was just a passenger in my own body. When I reached the spot, that same spot where it had all started, I stopped the truck and got out. The spiral pattern in the grass was almost completely faded now, erased by wind and weather. But I could still see it in my mind, clear as day. I stood in the center and waited. The pull was stronger here, the tone in my head louder. And then, just like before, everything went quiet. No wind, no distant sounds of cattle or coyotes, just absolute silence. The humming started, barely perceptible at first, then building. The air grew heavy, charged with electricity. I should have been terrified, but strangely I felt almost calm, like I'd been waiting for this moment even before I knew what it was. And then the light came. Not from above this time, but from within me. My skin began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter, light seeping from my pores, collecting around me like a fog. I held up my hands, watching in wonder as they shimmered with an inner radiance that wasn't quite any color I could name. Words formed in my mind, clearer than ever before. Signal received. Coordinate confirmed. Retrieval in progress. 19 complete. The ground beneath me began to vibrate. The air rippled like heat waves over asphalt in summer. I looked up and saw the stars moving, rearranging themselves into that pattern I'd seen in my dreams. Not the stars themselves moving, of course, but something between them and me, bending light, changing perception. I should tell you that I tried to run then, survival instinct finally kicking in, but I couldn't move, not paralyzed, more like suspended between moments of time. Everything slowed down, including my thoughts. The light around me grew more intense, pulsing now with my heartbeat, and in that light, shapes began to form, the same shifting entities I'd seen before, neither fully present nor absent, like they existed partially in some other dimension and were only projecting a shadow of themselves into our reality. One approached me, reached out with what might have been a hand, though it changed form even as I looked at it, touched that spot behind my ear. Pain shot through me, sharp and sudden, and I felt something being extracted. The beacon, the thing they'd put inside me. The entity held it up, a tiny speck of that same strange metal I'd found in the grass. It pulsed with light, then dissolved into the air. Exchange complete. Subject viable. Proceed to phase 20. Phase 20? What happened to 19? I wanted to ask. Tried to form the question in my mind, but communication only seemed to work one way. The light began to fade. The entities withdrew, becoming transparent, then vanishing altogether. The stars returned to their normal positions. The night sounds resumed. Wind in the grass. A distant coyote howl. Time snapped back into its normal flow, and I staggered, suddenly able to move again. I drove home in a daze, my mind racing with questions. What had they taken from me? What had they put back? What did subject viable mean? And what was phase 20? In the days that followed, things changed. The strange occurrences stopped. No more electronics malfunctioning. No more waking at exactly 3:14 or 3:19. No more mysterious cars watching my property. It was like a door had closed. But something else had changed too. Something inside me. I began to notice things I'd never noticed before. Patterns in nature that seemed to carry meaning. The way animals reacted to changes in the environment before those changes were visible. I could look at the sky and know, hours in advance, whether a storm was coming, even when the forecast said clear. Small things, subtle things, not supernatural powers, nothing dramatic, just heightened awareness. Like a veil had been lifted, allowing me to see connections that had always been there but had been invisible to me before. About a month after that final encounter, I received a letter. No return address, no postmark. Just an envelope in my mailbox containing a single sheet of paper with 19 words. You were chosen as compatible. Initial observation complete. Integration successful. Await further contact. You are not alone. I burned that letter too, but I remembered us every word. That was 8 months ago now. Nothing else has happened since then. No lights, no missing time, no strange visitors. Sometimes I wonder if it was all some kind of hallucination, some breakdown caused by grief or loneliness, or age. But then I catch myself knowing things I shouldn't know, sensing things I shouldn't be able to sense. And I touch that spot behind my ear, now just a small, barely perceptible scar. And I know it was real. They're still out there, watching, waiting. Phase 20 is coming. I don't know when, and I don't know what it means. But I know I'm part of something larger now, something beyond my understanding. 4 days of my life, gone in what felt like 10 minutes. But those 10 minutes changed everything. And I don't think they're finished with me yet. If you've experienced something like this, you're not crazy. You're not alone. I'm sharing my story because I know there are others like me out there. If you're one of them, hit that subscribe button and share your experience in the comments below. The truth needs to be told, one story at a time. And remember, sometimes what we can't explain isn't supernatural. It's just beyond our current understanding. Like I said at the beginning, I'm a practical woman. I believe what I see and feel and experience. And what I experienced was real.